Hello everyone, welcome to Crypto Basics Coach podcast. I'm Marco. I'm here to help people navigate this topic so as to benefit from the opportunity this new technology provides and not get distracted or put off from the nonsense there is out there about crypto. Anything and everything presented and discussed, whether here or in our sessions, is of an educational nature and should never be taken as financial advice. Always do your due diligence and consult professionals before making any final decisions. Hi everyone, welcome back. We're doing episode 6 of 7 around IT hygiene. So today I'm going to cover a fairly large topic, which is exchanges, specifically centralized exchanges, also known as CEXs, C-E-X. This is essentially the platform you're going to go to where you've deposited your fiat money and then you're going to be purchasing crypto assets through that platform. A lot of what I'm going to be covering today also applies to bank accounts, investment accounts, pretty much any website platform that you're going to log into with regards to your finances. Okay, so this is beyond exchanges, but I want to just specifically target this episode to exchanges. But everything I'm going to say here pretty much applies to any financial institution that you're going to interact with and connect to. These are all good practices to follow. Okay, so the first thing is which one? Which one are you going to actually connect to? So one way of reducing the risk of obviously connecting to an incorrect or potentially fraudulent or potentially dubious site is speak to your accountant or your financial advisor or your self-managed super fund auditor or your, for those that live outside Australia, self-managed super funds are just essentially retirement structures. Okay, go talk to those professionals and find out if in your jurisdiction there is an exchange or two that are licensed, regulated, and clearly these other institutions feel comfortable working with. Okay? And that's probably a good place to start. Rather than just jumping on YouTube or doing a search and selecting one from yourself, it's probably best on this occasion that you get some references. Okay? And it could be from other people. It doesn't have to be the professionals I've just mentioned, but I guess just go to a good source, get a good recommendation, and narrow your choices down to that particular entity. So once you've selected that entity, just because someone has recommended it, I don't care if it's a professional or a friend, okay, you still need to go and check some things out. And I'm going to cover those a little bit later in this episode. I'm just going to get a little techie in the first instance. So with regards to this new platform that you're going to connect to, we talked about in the previous episode about whitelisting. This is where you essentially create a list of things that your internet browser can access. Okay, so what you would do is you would add the address of this particular website or the URL onto your whitelist. And then that way you know that if you accidentally type something different, if you accidentally copy and paste the wrong URL, whatever it is, well, it's not going to work because the specific address is not in your whitelist. Okay, so the first thing to do is add to the whitelist. And just while I remember this, I actually hadn't put it in my notes, but be aware that some of these platforms, they're very good in the sense that what you're then able to do within your account is you're actually able to set up a reverse whitelist. What does that mean? Well, it means that you can specify where you're allowed to send crypto or deposits from your account to where you might be a bank, or it might be a cold wallet, it might be a hot wallet. So on these platforms, you're actually able to send up a destination whitelist as to where you're sending your stuff. Now, what's good about that is that I've seen a few where if somehow your account is hacked, for instance, if your address is compromised and someone gets in there and they go and add an address to your whitelist so that they can, hopefully transfer stuff out of your account and into theirs, what happens is you get notified via email or via SMS or however you've set it up, letting you know that, hey, look, there's been a change to your whitelist. Was this you? And it gives you 24 hours to take action in case it wasn't you and in case your account has been hacked. So this reverse whitelist function is really beneficial. So make sure you inquire whether your exchange actually allows you to do that. Okay, some do, Coinbase does, and I think it's invaluable because it gives you that pause of 24 hours that just in case your account did get compromised, you're able to take action and funds aren't able to just be immediately sent out of your account. Okay, so check that out while I think of it. So put your whitelist into your internet browser, and at least that way you know that you're only going to a very specific destination. Next question. Do they offer security or hardware tokens? Or they're also known as key fobs. So what are these for those that have never encountered them? In the IT industry, whether it's used for a whole bunch of purposes, but essentially what it is it's a USB stick that has a screen on it, and what it does is it constantly cycles through 5, 6, 7-digit numbers. Okay, so it's like a second authentication app, but it's on a hardware device. Okay, and clearly that makes it a little bit more secure because, as we've discussed before, mobile devices can be hacked and so forth, software can be hacked, and if you're constantly interacting with the internet, the chances are there. Whereas this is a hardware fob, meaning that, it just sits at your home. Unless someone has physical access to it, they then are not able to use the code that it generates. And what you're able to do is you're able to secure transactions, you're able to secure your login to accounts and so forth, because you'll be prompted, just like with second factor authentication, you'll be prompted for the code that device creates. Okay, so because it is a hardware device and because you need physical access to it, it makes it a lot more secure than just using a second factor authentication app on your phone, although they're pretty good too, because even though your phone might get hacked, the application won't get copied. Your mobile number might get hacked, but again, that application won't get copied. So I'll get on to second factor authentication in a minute, but ask and find out if they've got the hardware option that you're able to use. And then that way you'll use it for logging in, and you'll also use it for confirming any transactions that you're wanting to do. Okay, so again, it adds that extra level of security, even for withdrawals, in addition to the whitelisting we've just discussed. Then what security measures do they have in place? There are some exchanges that when you place the order, they will call you on your mobile to confirm. Okay, or they may confirm in another way. They may have second factor authentication that you need to use. Okay, and again, all these steps make it a lot harder for your account to be exposed and drained. All right, because you've got different pieces of the puzzle that it's very hard for a hacker to duplicate. Whereas if it's just a password and a login, well, yeah, you know where that ends up. So find out from them whether they've got second factor authentication. A lot more companies are now using pass keys. It could be that you need to provide confirmation via email or perhaps via SMS. Okay, but the authentication app would be the one that I'd recommend if you can't get hold of an actual hardware device. Okay, a key fob that does the same function. Then what you want to do, even if you have set all of this up, it doesn't hurt to have a habit of every time you go to one of these sites, just making sure you double check the URL and making sure that it starts with HTTPS. HTTPS means that it's a secured connection to that website. Okay, that's different to just HTTP. So if you're logging on to financial websites that have just got HTTP, be very, very cautious because that's not as secure. Okay, and it could be that someone's mimicked the URL, whatever the case might be, and you're actually logging into something that isn't what you want to get to. And then, as a matter of just good practice, even when you've done all of this sort of techie stuff, as soon as you've placed your order and as soon as you've got assets that you've purchased, if you're not trading, get them off. Get them off the exchange. I don't care whose exchange it is. Get them off and get it into cold storage, or as we're going to be seeing more and more, you will start to perhaps be keeping some of this stuff with an appropriate custodian, okay, an established institutional entity. You might split it across cold storage and an institution, whatever the case might be. But the point is, get it off the exchange, okay? A lot of exchanges are still exposed to the fact that if they go out of business, the asset is considered theirs, not yours, and you get into a whole world of hurt. Okay, so get it off the exchange and put it into cold storage. Now, for those of you who haven't interacted with these exchanges, just some context here. Most of them are going to ask for KYC. That's an acronym for Know Your Customer, which means you will, at the very least, have to provide perhaps a license photo or a passport photo. Some photo that shows that, there you are and it is you and the current date. Some of them even have a little phrase that you need to write out to prove that it's you. That's the basic KYC. If you're doing corporate structures and so forth, they're clearly going to be asking for articles of memorandum, official documents, the company certificates, etc., etc. Okay, depending on what you're setting up with, whether it's a trust or a company, they're going to ask for more. And this is going to become more commonplace. There are still some exchanges out there that don't require KYC, but interestingly, after you place an order and you're looking to transfer a certain amount out of that exchange and off to your cold storage, all of a sudden they ask for KYC. So they may not ask for KYC to set up the account, but there may be restrictions when you're transferring out of that account that they do require KYC. Okay, and that's just becoming more mandatory as regulations around the world come up to standard and tighten up. It's just the world we live in. One of the things, once you've set up all your account and so forth, or even potentially before, one of the questions you want to ask is, what are the withdrawal conditions and limitations? There could be amount limitations, or there could also be duration limitations, where it might take 2, 3, 4 days before you get your money out, right? So it's good to know these things up front so that you're not surprised at the very moment that you're using them. Okay, so investigate and do some due diligence on that, and that potentially might decide which platform you use. There might be 3 platforms you're looking at, 3 that you've been recommended. When you look at some of the things I'm covering, you might decide, look, I don't think I'll go with those 2. I'll just go with this one over here. That suits me more. Okay. One of the things that you want to look out for is the spreads and the coin availability. So coin availability is sort of self-evident. That essentially just means, well, which coins does this exchange cover? And there may be coins that you're interested in that exchange doesn't cover. So hence, having an account with that exchange doesn't help you. You might have to have multiple accounts with multiple exchanges to cover the breadth of coins that you're interested in. The other thing is that some of the spreads, and I've covered this off in previous episodes too, the spread is the difference between the highest bid price for a particular asset and the lowest sell price. So let's just pick Bitcoin for example. Let's just say you've got the highest bid is 70,000. You've got someone that wants to sell it at 70,000. But the lowest sell that seems to be on the exchange is, the lowest sell is 75,000. So what that means is that there's a $5,000 spread between the highest bid and the lowest sell. Now, clearly, the smaller those gaps are, usually means the better liquidity and the better price. Because if you just press the buy button, for example, you might end up paying more than 70, or you might be selling for less than 75, which is not what you want. Okay, so understanding the spreads. Also, some have very creative ways of explaining to you what their broker fees are. But what you'll find is that some of them that look like they've got really low brokerage fees, they've actually got pretty shitty spreads, which means that you're actually paying more than if you just paid a 1.52% brokerage fee. Okay, because what looks as though you're going to buy at 72, you end up actually buying it at 73.5. Yeah, so you've actually paid more. But they word it and they present it as if their brokerage fees are really low, but it's because they're making money on the spread. Okay, so be careful of that and look into that. Also, something else is, do they have an OTC? That's known as an over-the-counter service. Okay, or do they only do at market? So the difference between that is that at market means that you're essentially going to be placing an order like you might on the stock exchange, and you'll just sit there and wait until it's taken. And sometimes, if you're selling a large enough amount, you might find that in order for that to be fulfilled, it might comprise of a dozen different smaller trades. Okay, which isn't a bad thing. It just means it takes a bit more time and there's a little bit more accounting administration that you've got to do, but you'll still get taken. What OTC does is it allows you to give, and usually there'll be like a minimum amount that you're going to have to be buying. Usually it's monetary amounts, not quantity amounts, but they'll only take an order if it's of a certain size. And what you do is you place your order. You say, look, I want to sell, let's just say 100,000 Bitcoins at a certain price. And what they do is that they essentially go off in the background, parcel it all together from potentially different sources, and they come back to you with the exact price that you requested, and they fulfill your order. And that's all done in the background. Okay. Whereas market, that's done on the open market. The other thing too, by the way, is that your order is visible on the open market when you use the market option. Whereas with OTC, that order doesn't get displayed in their order books. So if you're looking at the screen and you're looking at all the bids and all the sells, your amount, your order won't be displayed there if you're using OTC. Okay, and so for some people, they like that. They get a good price. They know they're going to get an exact price, and they use that feature. So that's something you want to check out on your platform. Next thing is check out what insurance they have, especially around company failure, business failure. Are the assets being held as a custody function, meaning that if they were to go out of business, those assets are not disputed. They can't be wrapped up in legal lawsuits and so forth. They are your assets and you can then claim them. Or are they simply holding them on your behalf? And if they go out of business, what happens is the creditors are able to seize those assets. Okay, so make sure that you get an understanding of how they're structured and what's the situation around that and what level of insurances do they cover in case they're hacked and they have a genuine technical issue and so forth. Okay, so look into that. No different than, most people are completely unaware in most Western countries that their bank account only covers them for about $250,000, right? That's actually news to a lot of people, meaning if the bank was to go out of business and you had $500,000 sitting in your account, you may not get the other $250,000. Okay, so with these institutions, especially as your bags get bigger and you start transacting more, you're most likely going to have large amounts, so you want to know what you're covered for. And that's another reason for having multiple accounts, multiple exchange accounts, because you may want to spread your risk over a number of them purely based on what you're covered for. Okay, so look into that. No different than to banks. If someone's about to make $1 million in crypto and you go and put it all into the same account, well, just understand that only about 25% of that amount is protected. So perhaps you might want to go and open up 2 or 3 other accounts with 2 or 3 other banks. Okay, so just be careful about that. That might be news to some of you. As I said before, unless you're trading or setting up buy sells to take advantage of movements in the market, then get your assets off and put them into cold storage. Separate custodians will eventually become more and more available in each country. There are some that for large institutions and some of them have got minimum amounts that you have to be able to put with them, but that's just going to become more standard as time moves on. Might be a little bit harder to get your hand on one of those now, so learn about cold storage and use cold storage to your advantage. But as time moves on, I'm sure we'll get more options to be able to do things with existing banks and existing financial institutions. Okay, but from an IT perspective, go back to the start of this episode and understand some of the ways that you can lock down, ensuring that you're going to the correct destination. If you're looking to interact with that destination, both in and out, how you can secure that and make it a lot harder for a hacker to take advantage, even if they do get somehow access to a username and password, by the use of key fobs and second factor authentication. Double check your URLs and just be as tight as you can. If you approach every single session that you have with these technologies as you're about to move $1 million, right? What attitude would you have towards that? What would you double check? What would you ensure you've got in place? Okay, where a lot of people fall apart here is, look, I'm only doing $1,000. What the hell? I've done this 10,000 times before. I'll be fine. And that's usually when you're going to get caught. Okay, so just take a pause. I know the whole world's always in a hurry, but just take a pause, understand what you're doing, take a breath, and understand the steps that you want to go through to ensure that if you were moving $1 million, would you be feeling comfortable? Okay, there's lots of little things that can go wrong, and this is even just with your normal bank account. Okay, but I know that everyone gets a bit lazy, everyone gets a bit complacent, and that's usually when you get caught out. Okay. Next week, we're going to be covering you. I've mentioned it in a previous episode. It's a well-known fact in the IT world that the weakest link in everything I've discussed in these 7 episodes and in everything that you do from a technological perspective in life, the weakest link is you. And next week, we're going to cover some of the aspects of what to look out for, maybe some areas that need improvement or even just self-awareness or even educational. You don't know what you don't know. So hopefully next week I'm going to teach you about some of those things. And, at the end of these 7 series, I definitely recommend that you re-listen to them, either all 7 of them, maybe every couple of months, right? Just to refresh in your memory. What are some of the things that you should be doing? Are you doing them? Aren't you doing them? If not, why not? The risk you're taking by not doing it. This 7-part series was quite heavy, quite large, especially for people who are not from IT. And I'm sure that, some of your brains may have hurt after listening to all of this, but I hope you've got value out of it. It's an industry that I come from. I'm very well aware of it, and I also hear very traumatic stories of when people are stitched up, and usually it's because they haven't done something I've mentioned in these 7 episodes. All right, you guys take care. Hope you've enjoyed your weekend, and we'll talk again soon. Cheers. If you found this information helpful and are interested in a more hand-holding approach while navigating this complex industry, please visit cryptobasicscoach.com, that's basics with an S, and book a session. The first 30-minute session is free, and we can get to know each other, talk about what your aims are, what you're looking to do, and how I might be able to possibly help. I've helped people get started, set up exchange accounts, wallets, DeFi platforms, and general knowledge. Look forward to speaking with you. Cheers.